Hi there, everybody. This is Wendy Hernandez, and welcome back for another episode of the Family Law Insider podcast. This week's guest I think she was the first guest I ever had on my show. Her name is Penny Rivera, and Penny, on the first show we ever had of the Family Law Insider podcast, talked with me about high conflict relationships. And since it's been well over a year, I figured it's time to have Penny back. She's a licensed professional counselor here in the Phoenix, Arizona area. She works with all kinds of situations. She works a lot with children. So today, Penny and I are going to be talking about if you're a parent who's divorced or separated from the other parent and your children are saying that they don't want to see you or that's what you're being told, what do you do? Because this comes up a lot in my practice. So thank you, Penny, for joining me, and welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No problems. I'm happy to have you back. And, I have this issue that I just described come up a lot in my cases, where a parent will come to me and they say, I want to have this relationship with my child, but they come to me and they're saying, I don't want to see you, or I want mommy, and the age ranges vary. I mean, it could be from a little toddler all the way up to a teenager, and I just am never quite sure how to deal with it because I feel like sometimes forcing people to do things isn't that healthy, but on the other hand, kids are kids, and you can't let them run the show. So I want you to weigh in on this and tell me, do you, in your practice, have you ever had this situation come up?
This happens a lot with situations with divorce. This is a frequent issue that comes into my counseling. I'll either have one parent bring the child in and say, oh, they don't want to go see the other parent, and I hate having to send them over there because they cry, or I'll have the other parent come in and say, my child doesn't want to come see me, they don't want to come spend time, I don't know what to do. And you're right, it can vary in age from little ones up into, I've had 16-year-olds sitting in my office saying, I don't want to go see this parent anymore. And the funny thing is the range of why that happens can be so different. It just depends on the situation that is happening at hand. And I don't know if you want me to go through a few of those, or especially with younger ones, obviously.
Yeah.
With the little ones, they usually have an issue when it's the primary parent they've been with. They don't want to leave the primary parent because, they're young. They don't, it's hard for them to go spend time with a parent that maybe hasn't played a huge role with them, and they're more attached to one parent than the other. So that can be very stressful.
I would think so. And, I would think just from my own relationship with my 3-year-old and my husband, I could see how it could happen, in families where, both parents are actively involved, yet at this stage in her life, I feel like my daughter's more bonded to me because she just wants to be with me all the time.
Right.
And there's this, I feel like when it's the parent who's saying the kid doesn't want to be with me, there's always a tendency to point the finger at the other parent and saying, oh, they're alienating,
right,
the child from me. Is that always the case?
Not always, although that does sometimes play a part and a role. But usually what happens with the younger ones, and when I talk to clients, I think for the younger ones, having less time, like some families will come in, well, we're going to do the 5-2-2-5 plan. And for little ones, 5 days away from one parent or even the other parent is way too long, and that increases anxiety in them, and that causes them not to want to leave or go. So I'm always encouraging parents, cooperate with one another, work to a plan where you can have, I know it's inconvenient for the parents, but at this point, this really isn't about the parents, it's about the child, although I think some people get that a little mixed up.
Yes.
If they keep the child at the forefront, then they can cooperate and tend to make the time less between the visits, especially for the younger ones. And some of the older ones don't particularly like the longer stints either.
Okay. So, and that sounds like a good plan to me, is making the time between the visits less time. So, but how do parents talk to the younger ones about this? Especially when, like really younger ones, I'm thinking 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, who, they the reasoning isn't just yet quite
right
there.
Yeah.
What do you have tips for people?
Well, don't give too much detail, because you're right. Developmentally, they are not going to be able to understand all the the issues and things involved. So if you can keep it to a minimum, be real calm. If the parent is very calm and very, assures the child in it, then that decreases anxiety for kids. When I have a parent that's like, oh, it's so, and they are talking in a way that produces anxiety in themselves because they're struggling with it, it also increases anxiety for the children. So I need to just minimize as many details as possible and just share, okay, sometimes you're going to go spend a couple of days with daddy, then you're going to come back with me, or vice versa. You could call me if you need to. Video chat, that is the greatest invention, especially for children. You can video chat, and if parents are cooperative, especially the younger the child, and maybe if a child is struggling, as they get older, you can kind of set some, different boundaries. But especially the younger child, they may need to visually see that parent more frequently, because being away from that parent for so many days without contact, they're still developing, that sense of, okay, object permanence. When that person's not there, they're still alive, they're still in my life, but they're still developing that. So they need to at least cooperate with one another and give kids the chance to, I need to see mommy, or I need to talk to mommy, and allow them to either make a phone call or allow them to video chat for a couple minutes. It's not going to be a lot of time because little kids don't have a lot of things they're going to talk about, but I think they just need that visual contact to say, okay, oh, there you are, okay. Also, I encourage parents to give like a small, we've done mommy bears or daddy bears and have had them spray a certain scent or cologne or something that the child can take with them. So when they're missing that parent, they can cuddle with that bear and they smell something that reminds them of the parent, and it's soothing for them and a little comforting.
That's a really good tip. I've never heard that tip before. So that sounds good for any parent who has a child that's maybe struggling with separation anxiety.
Yes. Yeah.
And so what are the effects, the potential effects of forcing a younger kid, to undergo, a long period, a long absence from the parent they're attached to? I mean, because I hear all the time in court, kids are resilient, they'll get over it, blah, blah, blah. And I've said that a lot of times myself, but, what are there negative effects that could happen from?
There are increased anxiety. I've worked with teenagers, 16, 17 years of age that have severe anxiety because at a younger age, and of course, there's always different factors, though, because it all depends on how the parents are communicating with one another. It all depends on if you have a parent who may be doing some alienation techniques or talking negatively about the other parent. So there's always different factors involved. But definitely the longer stints between creates more anxiety. I've even had children come in where the parents got along great. It was probably one of the most applicable, best divorces, and the parents got along great, but the little girl was having extreme anxiety, and again, they were on that 5-2-2-5, and it's because the days between seeing the other parent was so long, and she had a propensity for anxiety anyway, but it just increased her anxiety when she was away from that parent. So these parents were great because they cooperated and they offered different times during the week where they arranged it where she could actually see the other parent, either before school or after school for a little bit. So they were wonderful because they worked very well together.
Okay. All right. So, and I think that's the ideal situation for any parent who has split from the other parent and shares children.
Right.
What you're telling me, like, is worrisome to a certain extent, because I know in my practice and in my experience in Arizona that judges are really moving more towards the equal parenting time. As long as both parents are fit, and there's no issues, the kids should be with them equally. And a lot of times they're going to the week on, week off schedule, or they're going to the 5-2-2-5 schedule. For anybody out there listening who doesn't know what that is one parent would have every single Monday, Tuesday, the other parent would have every single Wednesday, Thursday, and then they would alternate the weekends, Friday through Sunday. So a lot of judges are just going, both parents seem fine. This is what I'm ordering.
Yeah.
And that's scary to me. So do you have any thoughts on, for parents who, they might, the other parent may be perfectly fit, but, the child is just not in a position, really, or is not yet adjusted enough to have a long absence like that, how can that be presented to the court in a way that it doesn't seem like the parent's trying to withhold? Do you have ideas, or is there specific things that the parent can talk to the court about, behaviors?
Yeah, they can definitely go in and it depends if they're already working with a parenting coordinator or if they're working with a therapeutic interventionist. See, that all depends, because it depends on the parent's divorce. If it's a good divorce and they're working, then both parents are usually very pliable, and they'll work together, and they'll usually come into counseling. And when I see both of the parents, I just explain to them, okay, here's what I'm seeing visually with your child. These are some things that are causing, when kids come up and they have stomach aches all the time, they don't want to go to school, or I don't feel good, I just can't go, or you're getting calls from the school saying your child keeps complaining of headaches or stomach aches. These can be signs of anxiety and some depression in children. And so if parents work well together, then I can work with them in the counseling office, and they don't have to go, to court to resolve it. Unfortunately, we have quite a few that don't work so well together, and then we end up having to go to the court system. So this gets a little tricky, because if there's a parenting coordinator involved, then usually the parenting coordinator would, like I work with parenting coordinators, so they'll call me and they'll talk to me and say, what do you see? What do you believe is happening here? And then the parenting coordinator can become an advocate also for the child in trying to really work with that. I have to agree with you, judges don't really have that concept of children in this. They're just there to kind of, let's divide this, let's make this even, let's make this equal. So it is hard, because a lot of my clients want to take me to court with them, but the judges don't want counselors in the court. They don't want, and they said that's why we have a parenting coordinator, or that's why we have a therapeutic interventionist. So it is hard for that parent when they're trying to make the court understand, because typically if they're in court, the other parent is saying, nope, the child's fine, there's no problem, there's nothing going on, they're just trying to keep the child from me. And then it becomes an issue between the parents.
Yeah. Okay. So I'd like to talk about older children for a little bit, because we've been focused on the younger children. So, I've had situations where we have like children ages maybe 12 and up who are saying, I don't want to go with dad. And it's a lot harder to force a 12 or a 16-year-old into a car or onto a plane than it is a 3-year-old.
Right.
So how do we deal with this? I mean, I don't know what to do.
I would like to see judges do more. Okay, then we need to do some intervention here. We need to have this child doesn't want to go with, and that child doing like some type of reunification therapy. They need to go into counseling. We need to figure out why this child is having such an issue going with that parent. And so when the parents usually bring the child to me saying, okay, this is what's happening, my child doesn't want to go with their other parent, or the other parent's going to go, my child doesn't want to come with me, I usually start working with the child on, okay, what's going on, what's the feelings involved. And it's interesting because, again, it could be all kinds of issues, especially if the parent who left in a way, if it was an affair, if it was, more just an aggressive type relationship, then they have, sometimes they have resentment towards that parent. Well, you broke our family apart, you left mom, you left me, and sometimes the other parent doesn't deal with the divorce as well, so the other parent, the kids are seeing their primary caregiver maybe falling apart, and so the kids feel like, oh, I've got to help take care of mom, and that means being loyal to that parent. Or sometimes it's dad. It depends on the relationship with the child. And so I usually want them to do counseling together so we can kind of reunify and kind of work and break down some of the barriers that are there, and that's basically about the only thing a parent can do. Now, in Arizona, both parents do have to sign off on the child's counseling. That's just the state law, unless one parent has been given permission by the court to make that decision. So that can pose a problem because one parent can say, well, I don't approve of that counselor. I don't approve of this counselor. And so then it becomes a battle, and then that parent who really needs the reunification therapy with that child may not get the services, and then they're back in court searching for a parenting coordinator and then going through that process.
Okay. And I've seen what you just described happen a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So is there, in your mind, is there a downside? I mean, because with older children, they can reason, you can talk to them more. And say that say there's a situation where, it's not like one parent has been gone for months, it's maybe been a month, but it was a breakup, and now the kids don't want to see the parent. Is there a downside to that parent taking the matter into his or her own hands first and, taking the children out to McDonald's and talking about it? Or do you think that professional help, like the type that you offer, always should be the first step?
Well, it depends on if it's a severe case where the child is throwing a fit and being really just adamant, I am not going, I'm not, then you definitely want to have a therapist involved, because there needs to be some type of work, because if then you're going to be physically forcing the child, and that can be traumatic for yourself and the child. Yeah. If it's just more of a, I don't want to go, I think the parent should sit down with them and say, well, let's talk about it. What is it that why don't you want to come here? Unfortunately, I see too many parents go, well, fine, if you don't want to be with me, then I don't want to be with you. And I see that happen a lot. And I'm like, okay, let's grow up.
Right.
Parent to be the parent. And sit down with them and ask why. What's going on? Why don't you like coming here? What are you feeling? And usually it's because the kids don't feel like they can be honest with that parent for whatever, or they feel like they can't. It's not emotionally safe to share how they feel with that parent, because either that parent's been a little judgmental or more aggressive when they express themselves, or condemning when they share something.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so that's helpful. Now, when I hear therapeutic intervention, to me, I feel like, and I know a lot of my clients feel this way, it feels like this is a process that is going to take like months and months and months, and that, my client is not going to be able to have the relationship with his children that they both deserve for months or even a year. Can you explain a little more about therapeutic intervention, and really, is this something that is always prolonged?
It depends. If a child is really feeling, and of course, each case is different, and we don't even know what's gone on between the parents during the marriage and what the relationship is with the child. So some relationships are a little bit move more quickly, and you can kind of mend and repair, and you can kind of get them moving quickly. But if there's been a lot of emotional damage or some alienation, we talked about some alienation techniques going on, those may take a little longer, because now you're breaking down maybe some false beliefs that have been set up, and these kids are like, yeah, but why would this parent lie to me? And so a therapist has to be very careful on how they're approaching, because if there's an alliance built up between one child and one parent, that takes time to help break that down, so that child can, see, okay, wait a minute, maybe this isn't dad's fault, or maybe this isn't mom's fault. And then also when I'm working with the parents, I'm pretty confrontive. So if I see a parent doing some enmeshment with a child, and or doing some inappropriate interaction with a child, I definitely call them out on it, because they need to see that this is unhealthy for their child, and it's I'm getting the Internet Explorer has stopped working.
Are you
still hearing me?
Okay,
good.
Yeah.
Okay. So, it just depends, but sometimes it doesn't have to take, months or years. It just depends on how much damage has been kind of done in the process.
Okay.
Before it's come up to that.
So with therapeutic intervention, how does that process work specifically? I mean, is it everybody gets together in a room, or the parent and the child who doesn't want to go with the parent get together in a room, or are you meeting with them individually first, and then when the time is right, put them together? Does it all depend?
Yeah, it kind of depends. So usually with the older kids, I do separate it first, because I want that child to know. Most kids and older, or teenagers come in thinking, well, you're just going to side with my parent because you're an adult. So I need to definitely build rapport with them, and I need to build a relationship with them and let them know that, I'm not siding here. that I really want to know what they think, and they do have a voice and their opinion is valuable. And then I want to meet with the parent because I want to hear the parent side. And then at some point, sometimes I'll bring them together, see how it works for a little bit. If the teenager or the adolescent seems resistant at first, then I'll break them apart, and then I'll kind of bring them together. So it really depends on just what the child is exhibiting at that time. But I definitely, at points, want them together because usually the issue is the child's not able to communicate with that parent. So then when I get the child feeling confident enough that they can express how they feel to the parent, and I get the parent in a place where I've taught them how to respond. When you're hearing something you don't like, how do I respond to that? And teaching them how to empathize with their child.
Okay. All right. So thank you for that. How important is it that both parents are involved with reunification therapy?
Super important. Unfortunately, I don't get that a lot, but it's really important. If I have and it's funny because I'll get the teenager or adolescent coming in and go, well, my mom wants me to have a good relationship with my dad. But then as I start talking to them, getting more details, and as I start talking to that other parent, I find out that that's usually not the case. Usually if I have a case where the other parent is supportive and says, I want them to have a relationship with this parent, I'm not sure what's going on, that process goes so quickly because the other parent is encouraging that. Usually what's happening is I have another parent on the other side that's not encouraging it, and they may not be doing it overtly. They may be doing some covert comments here and there, some little things there. And that kids are so smart. They read into that. They know what you're doing. It's a little manipulative. And so then, of course, they're going to side with the feelings of that parent. And then that sets up that not wanting to go with the other. Well, I can't go with the other parent because this one, I've heard what they've said about them or I know how they feel about them.
Yeah. Okay. So I had a case many years ago where there was a boy, and I think he had just turned 17, and he'd lived with his mom for many years. It was a bad breakup, and his father, my client, really wanted to see him. They lived in another state, but the boy was just like, I'm not going to go,
Mm-hmm.
And it was really sad for me, and it was sad for the father, just because he felt like his son, the court didn't force the son to go. And the father felt like, he lost his son. Is there anything a parent like that, in a situation like that, can do?
I always tell parents, you pursue your child. Do not wait for your child to pursue you. So in a situation like that, I encourage parents, then you get on a plane, you go to that child, and you at least meet. I don't care if you meet them for an hour. That child needs to know that I love you, I'm coming after you, I will pursue you. If you don't want to come to me, that's fine, but I'm going to pursue you because I love you. And when I see parents, and first the teenagers or adolescents are resistant to that, but you know what? They still has a message sent to them that, wow, this parent does love me, they value me, they want to come after me. And so when they reach adulthood and they get a little more mature, that makes it easier to transition into a more healthy relationship as a parent and child. But I see too many parents go, well, they don't want to come, so that's it. And then and I'm like, well, go pursue them, go. I don't care if you only spend 1 hour with them and you rode on a plane for 5 hours. How important is that child to you?
Yeah.
And that's what that child is asking. How important am I to you? You want me to come to you, but will you come to me?
Yep. Excellent.
And
that's excellent. Excellent point. So this has been a really good conversation. It's already time to end, believe it or not, but it was helpful to me in a lot of areas. So I'm sure that some of the people who watch this later and who listen later are going to find it helpful. And if you live in the Phoenix area and you're involved in a situation like this or many other types of situations, Penny can help. So Penny, tell people how you can help people and how they can find you.
Well, I work for Professional Counseling Associates, and they can either contact by phone, which is 480-730-6222, or they can go on our website is under construction, but they can still get basic information about us, and that is www.pcasl.org. and they can get that information. But just if I can end on one last note, is
Yes.
I always encourage parents, if they have a child, always still pick up the phone. Kids have text messages, always at least once a week. If they're not wanting to contact you, you send them, hey, just thinking of you, hope you have a great day. Don't have any expectation of a response, but you pursue them and you let them know, I love you, I'm there for you, and and at some point they will respond to that if they don't feel like you're trying to coerce them. But I'm just sending you a message, thinking about you, hope you have a great day, love you.
Oh, awesome advice. That's awesome, and it's perfect. Penny, thank you so much, and we will have Penny back because I think we have a lot of stuff to talk about. So
there's so much.
There is so much. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Family Law Insider podcast. Remember, we're on your side when it matters most, and I'll see you next time.